Let me just wait to see. All right. You guys can hear me okay? Just give a thumbs up and then we can start. Right. Okay, so thank you everyone. The Visa Bulletin is out. And as you probably know, there's a big news, a big jump, both in the final action dates and also the dates for filing. And I'm going to explain, like the difference between each table, this way, like you can understand, how the Visa Bulletin works, how, wait, one second, my audio is acting weird, just one second. Okay, I think we're good now. So when you go, to the Visa Bulletin, in first of all, like what is the Visa Bulletin? Like why it exists, like why do we have, all these dates and etc. Um, the Visa Bulletin exists because obviously there are more people applying for immigrant visas such as EB1, EB2, EB2NW, etc. Then there are visas available. Congress, puts a limit on how many immigrant visas are issued every year, and because of that, there's it's pretty much like, when you go to a doctor and there are many people waiting for the doctor and they give you like, um, they give you a number and you just wait for that number, for it to be called out. So the visa bulletin is pretty much the same. It works as once you submit your petition and you have your priority date, then that priority date is your password. It's your number, and they're going to call you once that number, is current. So basically, the visa bulletin is pretty much, like a queue, like a line, and you have to wait until your priority date and for you to proceed with the next steps of the petition process. So once you submit your I-140, you have to either, if you're in the United States, you have to wait to do the adjustment status. If you're outside of the United States, you have to wait to process the consular process. Okay, so that's pretty much it. But the visa bulletin is very confusing, and it takes a while to understand it. It takes a while to interpret it because once you open it, there are basically two tables for employment-based visa applications. Okay, so the first table that we have here is called final action dates for employment-based preference cases. And then, like on the first column, you have employment-based first, second, third, other workers, fourth, and etc. etc. And a lot of people think like, well, where is the EB2 and AW? So there is no difference in the visa bulletin between the regular EB2 and the EB2 and AW. So they're both within the second category. Okay. And if you're not from China, if you're not from India, Mexico, or the Philippines, you're basically follow, what they call the rest of the world, like the column that's called all chargeability areas except those listed. So that means that, your priority date, which is not the date when the petition was approved, it's the date that USS received your application. Okay, that's your priority date. If that priority date is the same or if older than the priority dates in the visa bulletin, that means like you can like proceed to the next steps. Okay. Now, this visa bulletin, it's special. I would say like it's more special than others because something very unusual happened, which means for the EB2 and AW category, the priority date for those who are adjusting this status became current for everyone. So that means, for example, like if you applied, let's say 3 days ago, and you already have a priority date today, and let's say tomorrow they approved your petition, you can already adjust your status. I mean, this hasn't happened for years, since the pandemic, since, the surge in EB2NW applications. The second category, which is EB2 and EB2NW, haven't been current for a very, very long time. So this is very, very good news. It caught everyone, by surprise. No one, and I've been telling you, like, every time, no one can predict the visa bulletin. Okay, no one. A lot of people say, oh, next month is going to be 2 or 3 months jump, or there will be no movement. No one can predict it. And obviously, no one could predict that it would be current this month, I mean, next month, which would be March. So being current, it's a very, very important factor for a lot of people. There are, especially those who are already in the United States, because a lot of people are running out of their status. Their OPT or their F1, it's coming to an expiration, and they don't know what to do. The immigration scenario, it's very uncertain. There are a lot of changes, like officially or unofficially. So the priority date becoming current, it's very, very important for those people who are in the United States, who need to change their status as soon as possible. And a lot of people, have been waiting for this for many, many, many years. Not just people from the rest of the world, but imagine like people from India or China and etc. If their priority date becomes current, it's an event. But putting those countries aside, the rest of the world, it became current for dates of filing. And I'm going to explain, what is date of filing, what is final actions, like what are those two tables, why do they exist, why can't we have just one table, so I'll explain, each one. The first table is the final action dates for employment-based preferences. That means, for example, in if you're outside of the United States, that is the table that you need to use. And this March visa bulletin, we had a jump, from April to October. That was a big jump. There's a big jump, 6 month jump. So if you are outside of the United States, you use the final action table. Okay. If you're inside of the United States, you can adjust your status. That's where it gets complicated. Why? Because every month the USCIS tells us which table they are going to use for adjustment of status. Some months they use the final action, some months they use the dates for filing. Okay. So for people that are in the, adjusting their status, it's not as obvious. They have to wait not just the visa bulletin, but they need to wait further instructions of which table they need to use. Okay. So again, to recap, if you are outside of the United States, you're going through a consular process, you always use the final actions table. If you're inside the United States and you are adjusting your status, you need to wait until they tell you which table to use. Now, good news. This month, they already told us, just like a few hours ago, which table is to be used for adjustment of status. And thankfully, we're to use the dates for filing, which is current. So anyone who has a approved I-140 petition, they can already adjust their status. Okay, and a lot of people think like, oh, what if the petition is not approved? Especially those who are that have been waiting for a long time for a regular process. Technically, you can, but there are certain risks related to it. I would, we that's something that we can discuss in another opportunity. Because there are many risks to adjust your status if you have a pending I-140. Okay, there are many risks. Definitely talk to your attorney, talk to our attorneys, if you want to like discuss this possibility further. But for those who already have an I-140 approved, this is the time to adjust your status. Okay. Now, many of you are questioning why this is happening. Why all of the sudden, the visibility, became current, which again, it hasn't become current, for years. And I'm going to read here, an excerpt um, from the website, from the travel state, travel.state.gov website. But basically, what they're saying is uh, the travel ban had an effect on it. As you probably know, there are 75 countries that have like a partial ban. That means that if they're going through the consular process, they're immediately put on administrative processing, which means pretty much like a pause. Anyone that is outside of the United States that is not a dual citizen and is, it's a resident, or I mean, it's a they were born in a country that's within those 75 country list. They will go to the interview, but then they will not process any further until, like, the government gives further instructions. So anticipating that many people would not be able to go through the consular process, or many people that might, even like face some further scrutiny, even going through the adjustment status. That's why, this March visibility now is current for adjustment of status. So the partial ban hadn't affected, like the website, already says that. Uh, and the website also says something interesting. It says that if the ban is lifted, there might be some retrogression. So the thing is now, I would definitely recommend you, if you are eligible for it, go. If you have an approved I-140, and I would definitely recommend you to like start your adjustment status process. Because you never know. If they need to retrogress. The dates for filing. So as the sooner you start, the better. Uh, Another thing, I was going to discuss is what happens, after you file, and that's where it gets tricky, because even if the dates for filing table is current, it means that you can apply for adjustment of status, but your adjustment of status is not going to be approved until the final action dates is current as well. Okay. And then many people were thinking like, oh, then like, what's the purpose of adjusting the status? Well, the purpose is, you can secure work authorization, which is very, very important for, 99% of people. That's one thing. Second, you can get, your adjustment status, in progress, and already, get like an advanced parole, so you can, leave the country whenever you want. So that's also very important. Um, and that, basically, guarantees that you have, your spot there, and they're processing it until like the final actions date become current, and then that's when they approve, the adjustment status as a whole. Okay. But for many people, getting the employment authorization is probably the main reason to go for an adjustment of status. Okay, a lot of people, they're on F1, they cannot work, or they're running out of their OPT, and they need like a solution. That's where adjustment of status comes handy, because you can also apply for a work permit. So that's pretty much the summary of the visa bulletin. So just to summarize, you have two tables: dates for filing, final actions. If you're outside of the United States, you always follow final action. If you're inside the United States, you need to check, which table they're going to use this, for every month. For March, they're going to use dates for filing, and then you can apply for your adjustment status, and then just wait until the final action date is also current, and that's when they're going to, further process and approve your adjustment status. Now, that's very important, because a lot of people that are in the United States, and they are thinking about adjusting the status, they are also from the 75 countries that have been partially banned. Okay. And what can you expect adjusting your status if you are from those countries? basically you can expect either a pause or further scrutiny. We've seen some cases where they've been asking people to not just prove that being like look a law I know a law-abiding citizen, but that they have been actually a good citizen. And that's where it comes it becomes confusing, because how can you prove that you are a good person? And the government has given some tips. So for example, if you participate in volunteering work, you can evidence that. If you're part of a church or synagogue or a mosque or any religious association, you can get letters from those ministers attesting that you are a good person, you've been a law abiding citizen. If you also are part of any other organization, especially nonprofits, that's also a way to prove that you've been a good citizen. You've been filing your taxes on time and etc. So there's a variety of ways that you can prove that. So from the people that are within, they are from those 75 countries that have been partially banned, and they are just in their status. uh, there's not really a ban on adjusting your status. Okay, you can still adjust your status, but you just might expect some further scrutiny, like maybe an RFE requesting more evidence, just because you are from these 75 countries. So again, there's not a restriction for you to go for the adjustment of status if you are from the 75 countries. You just might receive an RFE, might receive questionings of like to prove that you've been a good citizen and etc. Okay, so that's pretty much like the visa bulletin. I'm very very happy for a lot of people, not just our clients, but for the community out there that they're caught off guard. And now it's the time for you to start gathering your documents, for you to adjust your status. And also, I'm going to touch base a little bit on that. The USS website also gives a checklist of what documentation you need for you to adjust your status. Okay, but first and foremost, I would definitely start doing the medical exam. Okay, so if you go to, let me see here, the website where you can find the civil surgeon. If you go to uscis.gov tools find a civil surgeon, you can find a doctor in your area that you can process like the medical exam for the adjustment status. The fees vary, usually between 150 to $250 per person. Okay, that's important, because the I-140, all the fees were just like for the main applicant. Now it's where things get very expensive. Adjustment status is very expensive, especially if you have a big family. Okay, because you have to pay a fee for each person. It doesn't matter if it's a baby, doesn't matter if you're like 89 years old. You have to pay a fee for everyone, and you pay a fee for adjustment status. You pay a fee for the employment authorization, which is optional, but a lot of people go for it. You pay a fee, if you want the advanced parole, if you want to leave the country, also optional. But like when you do the math, if you're a family of 4 or 5 people, that can add up. Um, so again, the medical exam, every single person in your family, and when I mean family, I don't mean parents. I mean spouse and children under 21 years old. Okay. So if you go to this website, or if you just Google USCIS civil surgeon, you can find the website where it will list, all the accredited doctors, physicians that you can contact and find, for you to do your medical exam. I would start there, because you can expect, an increase in appointments. So the sooner you lock in your appointment, the better. Oh, that's also something important. Okay, a lot of people, they see the visa bulletin and they see that's current, and they think that they can file tomorrow. You can't. Okay, The visa bulletin that just came out is the March visa bulletin. Okay, that means you can only file in March. Okay, so you cannot file tomorrow if your party date's not current. You can only file in March. Okay, so get, we still have 9 days until the end of the month. So during those 9 days, gather all the documentation. We're going to talk about a little bit more about the other documentation that you need to get. But gather all the documentation. Go for the medical exam, get all the vaccines that you need, and then wait until the first, or you can mail like the day after, for it to arrive at the USCIS on March 1st. Okay, so that's very important as well. The other thing I wanted to discuss is the other types of documentation that you need for your adjustment status. So, we have a list here. Again, this list, is there might, depending on your case, you might need more documentation. Okay. So, but basically, you need, two passport style photographs. You need, government issue identity with photograph. You need a birth certificate. You would need like all your documentation about your inspection or admission, or parole documentation, which means your visa stampings, your I-94, and any other documentation that proves that you've been like legally here in the United States. You definitely need your documentation for your immigrant category. So if you have an I-140 approved, you need the approval letter. Okay. Now, all these documentations, they do not need to be original. You only submit copies to the USCIS. If they need the originals, they will ask you. But at first, just send copies. Okay. So your I-797, which is your proof, your receipt notice. Also, you need other documentation that prove that you have maintained a lawful status in the United States. And again, I-94 records, visa stamps, tax returns, and etc. For example, for EB2 and AW especially, you need a signed statement confirming your intent to work in the occupational field specified in your I-140. Okay. So if you are, let's say, a computer science engineer, you need to, declare and sign a statement saying that that's the occupation that you are going to continue to work on. Okay. Especially for NIW, like the NIW is based on a project of national importance, so all of a sudden you cannot just, switch completely fields that are totally unrelated to your project or to your expertise. Okay. You also need, okay, very, very important. Listen to this very carefully. Okay. Once you go to the medical exam, the doctor is going to give you a sealed package. Do not open that package in any circumstance. Do not open it. Okay. That one you need to send the originals. Okay. So the doctor is going to give you a sealed package. Keep it. Do not open it, and you're going to attach it to your adjustment status petition. Okay. So that is the form, I-693, which will have, like all the report of your, medical examination, your vaccination records, and etc. Okay. In some cases, especially if you had, any, trouble with the police or with the justice, certified police and court records of all your criminal charges, arrests, or convictions, regardless, if you were, found innocent after. So, like, for example, if you were arrested, you need the police and court records for that. Okay. Now, if you're on like a J1 or J2 visa, I'm not going to discuss that. There's further documentation that you need from that, but and you can look it up, or we can discuss that in another opportunity. Okay. All these documentations that I just mentioned are just for the main applicant. Now, we need basically the same thing for the dependents, except like the written statement. But for the dependents, you need like like your a marriage certificate, for example, or like, let's say for your kids, you need a birth certificate that indicates, you are the legal guardian of that child. You need also pictures. You need, like the medical records and etc. So again, all this list that we're discussing here, is just like a summary of everything that you need to submit. Our law firm is processing adjustment of status for all those who are current. So if you want, to process your adjustment of status with us, you can send us an email at info@giveout.com, okay, which is the name of our firm. So, our attorneys will guide you on each and everything that you need. Okay. And again, especially for cases that are a little bit complicated, pending asylum or TPS, or, cases that are, a little bit out of the norm, I definitely recommend you seeking, like an accredited attorney, and our law firm, is one of the many firms that can help you with that as well. Okay. So again, you guys have a lot of homework to do, okay, in the next few days, especially, those who were, caught, off guard with the part that they become current. That means you get, all the documentation that you need, get the appointment at the doctor, as soon as possible, okay. Um, get all the documentation. I definitely recommend you, going through, an attorney if you want. Although, the adjustment of status is relatively, like a straightforward process. It's not as complicated as I-140. But again, like if you need legal advice or legal representation, definitely, seek like an accredited attorney. Okay. Um, let's see here. We have some questions. I may or may not be able to answer them. Let's see. So one question here from Ibrahim. I have an EB2 approved with party date 3/28/25. I submitted I-45 and the EAD pending on underlying pending EB1 with party date. So yeah, I'm not sure if this is a question or not. Um, can you assist with, AOS? Yes, our law firm can assist. Pending asylum, is very, very complicated. Very complicated. That's, where our attorneys will come in and give you like legal advice, because uh, things have changed a lot, during this administration. We've seen a lot of people with pending asylum in the Biden area getting, their adjustment status approved. Now during Trump administration, it's been more complicated. Okay, so this is definitely, if you have a pending asylum, or if you have a TPS status, or any status or situation that's, like more out of the ordinary, you definitely need, legal advice, from a accredited attorney. Again, our attorneys can help you with that, or, you can seek, elsewhere as well. Um, but, even if you are, with a very straightforward case, but if you are within, the the 75 countries that have been partially banned, also it's worth discussing, with a professional to see the additional documentation that I might need. Okay. Now that the party date has become current for adjustment status, a lot of people are asking, should I upgrade my petition for premium processing right now? Especially those people that have been waiting for a very long time. People that have filed, with regular process, they've been waiting. Like I know people that have been waiting, almost 3 years. Definitely a lot of people waiting 2 years at least. Okay. So my answer is, that depends. Like depends on what your attorney or professional strategy is. For our clients, our attorneys leave it up to them if they want to upgrade for premium or not. Everybody knows, like the premium for a fee for a lot of people, it's pretty hefty. It's now in March is gonna go up to $2,965. Okay, it's not a big jump from what it was before, but for a lot of people, that's a lot of money. Okay. So definitely, that's something that you need to evaluate, with your attorney, if that's the time for you to upgrade to premium. Okay. Now, I just had a conversation with the company Lawfully, Finn Reynolds, which is the head of insights and strategy at Lawfully. So Lawfully is the largest private immigration database platform that exists in the market, by far, by far. They track 15% of all EB2NW petitions. So, that is a very big, representation. That's a very good sample size. Okay. And if you go to our YouTube channel, I have there is our latest video with Finn Reynolds, which is the head of insights from Lawfully. And we discussed that. Okay. We discussed what are, the differences in education between premium processing and regular process. I must confess that his answer was not what I was expecting. According to them, at least the data that they track, they've seen a higher percentage of approvals with premium versus non-premium. Okay. Now they said that they cannot really track, like if it's been, filed with premium right away or if it was upgraded for premium. They put like all in a bulk with premium processing. So according to Lawfully, which tracks, again, 15% of all EB2NW petitions, according to them, premium processing applications for EB2NW have a higher approval rate than regular process. Okay. And again, there's much debate on that, and one of the things that we discussed, again, I definitely recommend you like watching this video from the interview with Finn Reynolds. According to him, you can also point out that this is because people that are fighting for premium, they are fighting under this administration, which has changed, like unofficially, the standards, for education. Okay, so basically they're technically more prepared, than people that have filed 2 years ago with a petition that 2 years ago would be approved, but right now, it's being challenged, like nothing before. So, the theory here is that, again, according to their data, that premium processing applications have a higher approval rate than regular process. Okay, that really came as a surprise for me, and I think for a lot of people, because that's not what we've seen internally. That's not really seen with other, when we discuss that with other law firms. One thing though that he did point out is that 90% of the cases that he tracks are regular processes. So there might be some discrepancies there as well. USS does not release data on the number of applications that were processed through premium versus non-premium. I did request USCIS through a FOIA request a while ago about that data, and I'm still waiting for that. And once I get that information, I'm definitely going to post that publicly, because I think it's very important for people to decide like if they should go for premium or not, based on statistics, based on their chances of approval. Okay, so again, there's one question here about the J1 waiver. Again, we're not going to go through the J1 because you need like additional documentation for that. And that's most of people, they don't fall into this category. We can discuss that like in another episode. But again, I'm very, very happy for everybody, especially those that are that came to a point where their status is about to expire. They don't want to go to to their home country. They already are very well established in the United States, and right now they have an opportunity to adjust their status. Yeah, I received a few questions here. I have my I-140 but got RFE. I'm preparing to submit my RFE. Can I still file for I-485? Okay. Again, this is definitely something that you could discuss with an attorney. What I will tell you is what our firm and our attorneys say about the risks of filing adjustment of status with a pending I-140. There are several risks. Okay. Number one, if your I-140 is denied, your adjustment of status will also be automatically denied. Okay. So you lose all your fees. Again, it's a big fee, for I-140, especially if you have a family. I mean, for adjustment of status. So you lose all of that, and it'll be two petitions, denied at the same time. Second, with a lot of people don't think about it. If you've got an employment authorization through your adjustment status, and your I-140 is denied, you need to stop working immediately, or else you can, you can, like, you can be seen as working without authorization. So your employment authorization will be invalid automatically once your I-140 is rejected. So again, and if you haven't kept, with your underlying status, you can see yourself as out of status, and you have to leave the country immediately. Again, that's definitely something you can discuss with our attorneys or with other attorneys. There are many, many, many risks related to fighting adjustment of status with an I-140 pending. Okay, so again, talk to your attorney, talk to our attorneys if you want. But beware that there are risks. Okay, there are risks, and sometimes talking to a professional, you might evaluate if these risks are worth or not taking. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I think again, I'm very happy for everybody. I think we covered a lot of the main aspects and what it represented. Again, it's been years and years that the visibility is not current. Okay, in my opinion, like, and again, if you see, like, Trump's interviews, like, before, especially, like, in the beginning of his term, he did say he wanted to reduce the backlog. I can look for the interview here and post later, but that's something that both him and the USS director have publicly disclosed, that they want to reduce the backlog. And again, there are ways to do that. One of the ways is to deny more. The other way is to, like, partially ban some countries, from further processing. Uh, but again, I'm very happy for those who have, I-140 approved. Now, you can definitely, adjust your status, and just wait until the final action date is current for you actually to get your green card. Okay. So again, thank you so much. It was a fun conversation, and again, you can check our other interviews that we have in our channel, especially our latest one with Lawfully. I think you'll get, like, a lot of good insights about the current immigration trends on, like, a data perspective. Thank you.